Right. Let's start off by saying Barak Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rachakodash. Welcome to another live lesson. The name of this one is Daniel, the 7th chapter. So a couple of points I want to make through the Spirit, power of Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, concerning this chapter. This is a very important chapter as far as prophecy is concerned, because pretty much what the Most High showed Daniel in this chapter, pretty much he showed him some of the major empires that would be ruling, and what would happen at the end of those empires ruling. And when Daniel saw the vision, he really didn't understand it. I mean, some of it was explained to him, but he really didn't fully understand the whole vision. Now, a part of, this chapter that I would like to focus on, if the Spirit allows, pretty much is the part after the fourth kingdom, when after these kingdoms come and go and rule, then the kingdom of Yahweh Shai, which is our kingdom, being joint heirs, will be set up and established. Now, any reputable scholar out there, and anyone that has done any serious research on Daniel the 7th chapter, will tell you that the first beast was the Babylonians. The second beast was the Medo-Persian Empire. The third beast was the Greeks, and the fourth beast was the Roman Empire. And the Lord said that after that fourth beast would go down, then the kingdom of Yahweh Shai and Yahweh Shai would be established with the Israelites. So what happened? Because the Roman Empire came and it went. So what happened? What happened is the Roman Empire fell, but it would come back into power because there's certain little details within Daniel 7 that hints, towards, a branching off of the fourth beast, if you're following along. So in this lesson, Lord's will, we can get into that. Like I said, Daniel's 7th chapter is a very important chapter to know in prophecy, because in a nutshell, the Most High showed Daniel from that point till now all the kingdoms of the earth, the major kingdoms of the earth that will rule, and after that Yahweh Shai would take these kingdoms down and be established. That's why in the 9th verse it says, and I saw, let me see, I beheld till the thrones were cast down. That's the point. So we're going to start at the first verse and read on down. All right. Daniel 7:1. It says, in the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, this Belshazzar was the one that was taken down in the 5th chapter by Darius the Mede. That was the last Babylonian ruler, or the last king that ruled in Babylon before the Medo-Persian Empire took over. It says Daniel had a dream and visions of his head upon his bed. Then he wrote the dream and told the sum of the matter. So pretty much what he's doing now is he's recounting what he saw in the vision, similar to what brothers do when they have a dream or a vision and they do a video on it, and speak about, the dream and the vision that they had, and breaking it down in prophecy. It says, Daniel spake and said, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of the heavens strove upon the great sea. That great sea is dealing with the Mediterranean Sea. It says, and four great beasts came up from the sea, diverse one from another. Now, keep in mind, when Daniel saw this, when John the Revelator saw the visions that he saw. They actually saw beasts, but these beasts represented something. So let's jump to the 17th verse so that you can get the understanding of what these beasts represented. Verse 17, the great beasts, which are four kings which shall arise out of the earth. So pretty much what the Lord was telling them was there was going to be four major empires that were going to rise out of the sea. Now, within those empires, you had other joint rulers with them, which were other nations, but the major ones, were four. All right? So let's go back. Now, verse 3. It says, and four great beasts came up from the sea, diverse one from another. The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. Now, the first represents the Assyrian Empire. Because the Assyrian Empire, it said it had wings, eagle's wings. Now, when you look at Assyrian art, they have something called the griffin. Now, the griffin can be a lion with wings. In this case, they had a beast that's kind of looked like a horse that had wings on his back, and it had the head of an Assyrian. So this is a representation of the Assyrian Empire, because the Assyrian Empire was a very powerful empire prior to the Babylonians, the Babylonian Empire being established. It says, I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked. And when were the wings plucked? When the Babylonian Empire took over the Assyrian Empire and was established. Okay? Because the Babylonian Empire ended up taking over the Assyrian Empire. So in some circles they call it Assyrio-Babylonian Empire. It says, and it was lifted up from the earth. And why was it lifted up from the earth? Because there was one, you had the Medes and the Persians. The Medes ruled first and the Persians took over, but the Persians became greater. So they were exalted. It said it made stand upon the feet. I'm sorry, I'm jumping the gun. This is dealing with Nebuchadnezzar and the Babylonian Empire. Salakia, I was thinking about the Medo-Persian Empire. It said, and let me read that again from the fourth verse. The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings, which is the Assyrian Empire. I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked. That's when the Babylonian Empire absorbed the Assyrian Empire into the Babylonian Empire. And it was lifted up from the earth. And this was the Babylonian Empire that was lifted up from the earth and made stand upon the feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it, which was a representation of Nebuchadnezzar, which he was the greatest king in Babylon. He was like the top. That's why Daniel saw him in Daniel the 2nd chapter as a vision of the head of gold. You see? All right. So it says, so this is a representation of the Babylonian Empire. So you had the Assyrians, the Babylonians, right? Verse 5. And behold, another beast, the second. So now the second beast is coming into power, like to a bear. And this is a representation of the Medo-Persian Empire. Now the Medes came up first. The Persians came up later. But the Persians had the greater portion of the kingdom, because they were mightier, stronger, and they were supposed to be the ones to take over. So it says, and it raised up itself on one side, and that's what I was meditating on when I read they lifted up himself from the earth, So I jumped the gun. So this right here, and it raised itself up on one side, because even though the Mede Empire came first, the Median Empire came first, when the Persian Empire came in, they became more exalted, higher. That's why, you could even read about that in Daniel the 8th chapter. That goes into the whole history of the Medo-Persian Empire, and how there were wars between Alexander the Greek, or Alexander the Greek, and the Medo-Persians, Darius and them. It says, and it had 3 ribs in the mouth of it between the teeth. Now that is a representation of the 3 areas that they conquered, but it also is a representation of the directions, because they came from the east, They conquered towards the west, towards the north, and towards the south. You know. So it says, and they said thus unto it, arise, devour much flesh. Yeah, because the Medo-Persian Empire, conquered many regions. And it was a very great empire. They had many different mercenaries from different nations, and back then it was thought lunacy to come up against this empire. It was thought insanity, to fight against them. So that's why when Alexander the Greek, which was the first king to bring together all those Greek city-states, he was the one that accomplished it. Why? Because he was the man that was in prophecy to do this thing. Let me get First Maccabees, the first chapter, so we can read a little bit about that, because we're about to go into the next beast. So let's read the next beast, and then we'll get into the book of Maccabees. All right, verse 6. After this I beheld, and lo, another like a leopard. Now the leopard represents Alexander the Greek plus the Greek Empire, because he was the head of that, and he was the one that conquered all of those nations back then, and the whole realm of the known world back then was under his grip, under his power. Because you had the period that they call Hellenization. And if you get a chance, you can go, on the net and look up the term Hellenization. And when you look up the term Hellenization, it'll give you a breakdown as to what the Hellenization was about. Because the Hellenization was a period when the Greeks governed, and they pretty much imposed their will, so to speak, upon the world. And all peoples of the earth had to bow down to their laws, to their to their customs, and be tributary to them. Similar to today, you have America. When America goes around the world imposing their will on people, that's called Americanization. Americanization is the giving other nations the philosophies and the ways of the conquering empire, so to speak, so you could understand. So going back, it says, and this I beheld, and lo, another like a leopard, which had upon the back of it 4 wings of a fowl. The beast had also 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. And those 4 heads were a representation of Alexander the Greek's 4 generals, because he had many generals, but there were 4 main ones that the realm was spread divided amongst. I mean, you had another one, you had Antigonus also, but the main focus was on the 4, because that's what the prophecy focused on. They didn't focus on any of the other ones. So somebody jump and say, well, Alexander had more than 4 generals. Yes, he did, but the Bible only focuses on the main 4, because they were the ones that pretty much had those regions. And really, when you get deeper into it, the scriptures really zero in on 2 of those generals. But that's another subject. Okay. So it goes on to say, okay, so let's stop right there. Now let's go. Now, if you want to get outside of the scriptures, you want to get some history on the Medes and the Persians, the Assyrians, Babylonians, do some research. Go to the to the net and look up the history on these different nations. It'll give you a breakdown And it'll actually give you, when you go through it, it'll actually give you certain wars that they had with the next empire that transitioned the power of the previous empire to the next empire. Now, when you go into the Babylonians, right? When the when you go into the Babylonians, when the Medes and the Persians took over, there was no war. And the scriptures tell you that. You know, it was just a takeover, a hostile takeover. That same night, when the king and the nobles were all drunk and their women, you know, it was just they just took over. They just put him to death and took over the realm, the empire, and that was it. There was no major war, but there were major wars fought between the Assyrians and the Babylonians, or the Assyrian Empire and the Babylonian Empire. You know, there were wars fought between the Medes and the Persians. You know, so on and so forth. There were wars, many wars fought between the Persians and the Greeks, but there was one decisive battle. You know, I believe it starts with a G, if I'm not mistaken. Gargamella or something like that. And I believe that was the definitive war that gave Alexander the Greek the empire of the Persians and the Medes into his hands. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna read. You read what I tell you to read. Inside joke. We're gonna read in the book of Maccabees, First Maccabees 1:1. But if you want to get more history on the Persians, you could read the book of Esther. And in the book of Esther, it goes into Ashurus, which was one of, you know, the Medio Persian kings. You know, you had Esther, you had Nehemiah, you had the book of Ezra. That was all during the Babylonian / Medio Persian Empire. You know, because they were really around building back up the temple. You know, and Esther, that history takes place directly within the Medio Persian Empire. You know. All right, so, and like I said, the building also of, you know, or the protection of the Jews back then, or the Israelites. All right, so First Maccabees 1:1, and it happened after that Alexander, son of Philip the Macedonian, who came out of the land of Kittim, had smitten Darius, king of the Persians and Medes, see, that he reigned in his stead the first over Greece. And when you look up the history, it'll give you the exact war that was fought between them, you know, that actually that the Medio Persians lost, or Darius lost, you know, and the realm and the empire was given to Alexander. It says, and made many wars and won many strongholds and slew the kings of the earth. Now, why did he do that? Because it was his time to rule. As we're reading in the book of Daniel, the 7th chapter. It says, and took spoils of many nations, and so much that the earth was quiet before him, whereupon he was exalted and his heart was lifted up. And he gathered a mighty strong host and ruled over countries and nations and kings who became tributaries unto him. And after these things he fell sick and perceived that he should die. Yeah, because he ruled for like 12, it took him like 12 years to conquer all of these realms, all of these regions that took those different empires before him longer periods of time. But that was because that was the man that the Lord set up to do this thing. Even the priest showed him in the scriptures that the scriptures were speaking about him, because he did reverence the priest, because he had a vision that the Lord showed him about the priest and about the name of the Most High. You see? So when he came into Jerusalem, he treated them gingerly. He treated them, you know, he didn't treat them as he treated those other nations. So it says, wherefore he called his servants such as were honorable and had been brought up with him from his youth, and parted his kingdom among them while he was yet alive. And this, we just reading about this in the book of Daniel 7. But now here in the book of Maccabees is giving you the history of what took place, to link it up and tie it up, to show you who that particular leopard represented, which was Alexander the Greek and the Greek Empire. And when we read Daniel chapter 8, if we go to 20, it reads, "The ram which thou sawest having two horns are the kings of Media and Persia." So it's breaking down the vision. See, sometimes the visions are broken down and sometimes it's not. It all depends. It says, "And the rough goat is the king of Grecia, and the great horn that is between his eyes is the first king." See, and we're reading now in the book of Maccabees about the first king, because Philip, the father of Alexander, wanted that. That's why he was fighting so valiant, you know. And there was history that he was envious and jealous of his son, because when his son was born, there was, I don't know if it was one eagle or two eagles perched outside of their house or home, which that was a sign or an omen that this was the man that was going to bring all of the Greeks together and conquer the world, you know. So that's in Greek folklore, or, you know, Greek, you know, it's something that they speak about amongst their culture, right? So Alexander reigned 12 years and then died, and his servants bare rule every one in his place. And after his death, they all put crowns upon themselves. So did their sons after them many years, and evils were multiplied in the earth. Why? Because these were the Edomites ruling, you know. And when they took over, you know, they're the wicked. So the earth became, or the earth was already on a wicked vibration, but then the earth became even more degenerated and more wicked under the rule of the wicked, you know. And this is a lot of history. You know, when you go into these prophecies, in certain cases, there's a lot of history on it. You know, so when we go through it, we just give it to you like somewhat concise. You know, just certain basic points in it. You know, and then you have to do the research to get the rest. You know, because if you would try to break down these chapters and go word for word, you know, and try to match everything, you know, in prophecy and get the history and read that and then read about this king, and then you got to go research that king, then you got to go research this other king, and then you got to go research this war. So it's a lot. So you have to, when you break it down, you get concise with it, but then when you're studying it, then you can get all into it, you know. All right, so now going back, now we're in Daniel 7:7. It says, "After this I saw in the night vision, and behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible." Now, the fourth beast, like I said, any reputable scholar out there will tell you that the fourth beast is the Roman Empire. You know, they'll tell you that it's the Babylonian, the Persians, you know, which is the Middle Persians, the Syrio Babylonians, Middle Persians, Greeks, and the Romans. Any reputable, you know, scholar that ain't trying to hide, you know, because you have some that have some bugged out breakdowns of Daniel 7. But for the most part, if there's any reputable scholars out there, they will tell you that those are the four empires that this is talking about. So it said that the fourth beast, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly, and it had great iron teeth. It devoured and brake in pieces and stamped the residue with the feet of it. Yeah, because their military might was powerful, because they assimilated a lot of different tactics from other empires. You know, like the sword, and they had a short sword, and they had, you know, different weaponry that they got from the Spanish, you know, and then they from the Greeks they got certain tactics from the different empires, and they pretty much assimilated it into the Roman military, you know. And this is why when you read Daniel, the second chapter, it references the fourth beast, which is the Roman Empire, as iron, because iron You know, it's not as precious as gold. It's not as precious as silver. It's not as precious as um, bronze, or copper, but it's stronger than them all. And this empire was militarily strong, even though the other ones were also, but the strength of this one surpassed those other empires. So pretty much everything was assimilated into this Roman Empire, and they stamped the residue with the feet of it because they conquered nations. They made them tributary. They made them follow the ways and customs of the Roman Empire, speak the Roman language, and then but one thing they did do was they allowed those different nations to follow their customs, their philosophies, their religions. You know, that's one thing that they did. You know, and if you would make league with them and be tributary to them, they would be on your side. But if not, then they will come down with the hammer. It says, and it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it. So how was it diverse from all the beasts that were before it? Because the different empires that ruled before, they ruled by succession. You had kings, and kings had sons, which were princes, you know, and once the father got old or the father died, then the son would come into place. And if something would happen to the son, if they had a brother, he would come into place. So that's how the kings of the past ruled, you know, from the beginning of time. But when the Roman Empire came into being, the Roman Empire ruled differently. Why? Because that was prophecy. You know, they had a Senate house, they had a president back then, you know, known as an emperor or Caesar, you know. So they had one man that ruled, and then they had the Senate house. And this is the same guideline, so to speak, that America follows. This is why the scriptures refer to America. You know, pretty much America is the Roman Empire to get today revived. You know, with European allies. All right. So let's go to First Maccabees chapter 8 and verse 1. Now Judas had heard of the fame of the Romans, and they were mighty and valiant men, and such as would lovingly accept all that joined themselves unto them, and make a league of amity with all that came unto them. All right, so pretty much that's what they would do. You know, they would make a league with you. So I just want to jump down to the 13th verse. Also, that whom they would help to a kingdom, those reign, and whom again they displace. Finally, that they were greatly exalted. Yes, so because it was prophecy. There was a general by the name of Laenas, 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 Pompelo or something like that, Laenas, and he met up with Antiochus Epiphanes, because Antiochus Epiphanes was about to attack Egypt, and Rome had a league with Egypt. So when Antiochus Epiphanes came there to destroy them, the general met him and said, "Listen, you know, you need to turn back. You know, we need your answer. Blah blah blah. This, that, the sun, moon, the stars." And he said, "Well, I'll think about it." So what he did was he drew a circle around Antiochus Epiphanes. This is where you get the term drawing the line in the sand. And he said, "Look, before you leave this, this circle, I need your decision." So he had to give him the decision, and left and went back, and he was upset. He was pissed off, you know. So they helped the Egyptians. So what we're reading about, this is history. So it says, "Yet for all this, none of them wore a crown or was clothed in purple to be magnified thereby." Why? Because it wasn't a monarchy. You know? I mean, you had one man that governed, but then you had a Senate house. They would work together, but it was supposed to be the people's thing, Res Publica, So it was supposed to be the people's thing. Now you had an acronym, which I haven't gone over this in a while. So let me see. I think it was I can't really remember. It was like a four letter acronym that was a representation of Rome, and the people, and that what they call the Pax Romana. Let me see, SPQR. Let me see, SPQR. Yeah, it's not coming up. If anybody can SPQR. If any of you brothers can get that, because I'm offline. If any of you brothers can get that, and just write and just put out what it represents. I know it's I forget. So so if y'all brothers can put down the actual what the acronyms mean, and that was like a staple for the Roman Empire. And the ones that were down with him, they would help, and the ones that were against him, they would smash. As we're reading in Daniel the 7th chapter. For Senatus Populesque Romanos SPQR. Yep. So it's the Senate, the people, and it's Rome. So I guess I would have to go back. It's been a while since I look that up. So that's it right there. Senatus Populesque Romanos. Yeah. So you have the Senate, the people or the populace of Rome or something like that. So like I said, I haven't looked it up in a while. But anyway, y'all get the idea. So that's how they govern and rule. That's why it says that they were diverse from the others. It says, moreover, how they had made for themselves a Senate house. And this is the same thing we see here in America. This is what you see in America, the way that they govern, the way that the whole system is set up, that is that image of the beast. And that image of the beast was revived from the ancient Roman Empire. That's why you have so many parallels between America and the ancient Roman Empire. You see? From the Latin, for the legal terms, to the way that the building structures are set up, to the way that you have the Senate House and you have the president, you have your senators and governors and all that. That was the same thing that they had back then. And how they so-called are for the people, and how it was a republic, so on and so forth. Just bear with me 1 second. Yeah, like with some of this history, it's vast. So you have to every once in a while go over certain things, otherwise you forget. Now some of it is not really important. If you know it good. The main points to get is what's written in the scriptures. But if you have anything extra, then that's good. It's beautiful. Because it's knowledge. But at the end of the day, the main things that are important are the things that pertain to the scriptures. So now it goes on to say, moreover, how they had made for themselves a Senate house wherein 320 men sat in council daily. Now I don't know the number today, but I think this was a lot less back then than it is now, if I'm not mistaken. Like I said, it's been a while since I've gone over that particular history. It says consulting always for the people. See, because it was supposed to be about the people. Romanus Populesque, or Senatus Romano, Senatus Populesque Romanus. So it's supposed to be that the Senate House was supposed to officiate for the people. That's why they always would cater to the people. And whenever they were trying to get something done, what they would do is they would give the people bread and circuses, entertainment, so that they can pass different legislation that they wanted to keep the people diverted, entertained, as you will. All right, so it says, and that they committed their government to one man every year. You get that today, the president. You had the Caesars, which they got their name from Julius Caesar. Okay? It says, and that they committed their government to one man every year, who ruled over all their country, and that all were obedient to that one, and that there was neither envy nor emulation among them. And that was at the beginning. But then eventually corruption started getting up in there. They started, certain emperors, eventually down the line, when they started getting, what they did was just corrupt. Esau was corrupt, you know. So it started so-called noble, but then, corruption gets in there. Then you have Julius Caesar. They had to assassinate him because he tried to make himself a dictator. He tried to make himself a monarch, and that's not how the Roman Empire was set up. It wasn't set up under a monarchy. And if I'm not mistaken, that may go back to the Etruscans, but I would have to go back and research that. Lord's will Spirit hit me. I'll go through some of that Etruscan history and the early Roman. When they transitioned from the actual dark-skinned Japhetic people to Esau. So it says, and that they committed their government to one man every year, who ruled over all their country, and that were all obedient to that one, and that there were neither envy nor emulation among them. So now, that's some of the history going into the book of Daniel 7, and that was verse 7. After this I saw in the night vision, and behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly, and it had great iron teeth. It devoured and brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with the feet of it, and it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it. Now we understand why they were diverse. And it had 10 horns, because back then you had the 10 European nations that were, you had, the 10 back then that were in league with Rome, just like you have it today. But you always, even though you have, because the 10 horns represents the European Union, you always have that union, you always have that that agreement, that they sign together, but there's always skirmishes, there's always, backbiting, there's always, underhanded shit going on, plots, and different things of that nature. All right, that's why Yahweh Shai said, the kingdom divided against itself cannot stand. So it goes on to say, I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn. This little horn is different from the little horn in Daniel the 8th chapter. This little horn is a representation of America, because America comes out of that whole European Union. That's why I said that the 7 heads carried the woman. That beast, the beast with 7 heads and 10 horns carried the woman, because America comes out of that. And when you get down and dirty, America, which came out of those different nations, you have NATO, right? Which is a North Atlantic Treaty Organization. They have a union of almost 30 people or so, or 30 nations or so by now. I know it was in the high 20s last time I checked, so it's probably almost 30 or somewhere about there. They are supposed to have a equal say, but America is always the one that has the final say. If the number of European nations that don't want a particular thing to happen, but America wants it, and America happens to be in the minority, guess what? Whatever America says, that's what's going to go, because they're the ones that run that, and they come out of that union. You see, because America comes out of Europe through Britain. All right. It says, before whom there were 3 of the first plucked up by the roots, and this is going on all the way up until, this particular part of the vision, which I was speaking about at the beginning of the lesson. There's certain things that are written, that were giving us clues and hints that this wasn't taking place during the actual Roman Empire 2,000 years ago. It was going to be in the future. Because when America was established as that horn, there were other nations or other European nations that had property and owned land here in America. And America waged war against all 3 of them, which was the British, the French, and the Spanish, to take over America. So that's how those three horns, which was those three powers of those so-called European nations, were moved out of the way so America could be established. You know? It says, and behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. Yeah, because that's all America do. They just pop off at everybody. You know? Pompous because of their military might. You know? But they don't understand that that military might is going to be taken down. So, as we're reading about the four beasts that are representative of four empires, we come down to the next verse, which is verse 9, which is after the four beasts that Daniel saw. But remember, the fourth beast, we get more understanding of it when we read the book of Revelation 13, because that fourth beast, which was the Roman Empire, had fell under a deadly wound, but that deadly wound was healed. See? And that was that, and this is the reason that when the Roman Empire fell, the kingdom of heaven wasn't established yet, because there was still another part to that fourth beast that had to be exalted and set up and taken down. And we're now at the ending, or the taken down part, because it was already set up and established. Now we're here, 2020 year of prophecy, and we're seeing the decline and the fall of this fourth beast, which is the Roman Empire, which is America today, Babylon the Great. It says, so it goes on to say, verse 9, I beheld till the thrones were cast down, and the Ancient of Days did sit, because the Most High is going to judge the world. Yahweh is going to judge this world. He's going to use Yahweh Shai to do it. So what Daniel saw, he saw all of these different nations falling. That's why when we read Revelation, the 19th chapter, it spoke about Yahweh Shai having many crowns. Not talking about actual crowns, but the what's the word I'm looking for? The credit for taking these nations down is going to be given to Yahweh Shai. That's why he's known as King of Kings and Lord of Lords. Right? It says, whose garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head like the pure wool, because the Heavenly Father Yahweh is a so-called black man. His son Yahweh Shai is a so-called black man. The so-called angel, the angels in the heavens, you know, the angel are so-called black men. All right? So you could understand. It says, his throne was like the fiery flame, and his wheels as burning fire. That's talking about a chariot, so-called UFO, you know, or UAP, whatever you want to call it. You know, it's a chariot that the Lord was, when Daniel saw him, the Lord was on that chariot, you know, above that chariot. And he saw the chariot underneath the Lord, right? And he gave an explanation, you know, or description of what it was. It says, a fiery stream issued and came forth from before him. You know, thousands ministered unto him, which are the angels, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The judgment was set, and the books were opened, and because the Lord is about to judge this world. I beheld then, because of the voice of the great words which the horn spake. You know, now it's going, reflecting back to fuck you doing, man? Let's read that again. I beheld, it's like I was thinking out loud. I beheld then, because of the voice of the great words which the horn spake. I beheld even to the beast was slain, and his body destroyed and given to the burning flame. So pretty much, the fourth beast was going to be destroyed by what? By fire. The Roman Empire was not destroyed by fire. You know, you had wars, you know, you had skirmishes out there, you know, but the Roman Empire was not destroyed by fire, because even when Nero burnt the city down, they reestablished it back, and the Flavian dynasty, through Vespasian, Titus, and Domitian, they reestablished, you know, the glory of Rome, so to speak. So that wasn't talking about that. Then after Domitian, that's when, you know, the Roman Empire fell to Jake, but Jake was still pushing that Roman philosophy, the Roman ideas, you know. And it wasn't until Constantine came into view that they started applying Christian principles to it, but they were still being pagan about it. And then eventually the Byzantine Empire took over, and for a period of 1,000 years, the beast had fallen, you know. So Rome did not fall by fire. So the fourth beast would be taken out by fire. And what fire is that talking about? The nuclear fire, which is spoken of in the book of Isaiah 54, and is also spoken of in the book of Revelation, known as the lake of fire. So this is the reason why, as we read on down, now we're getting different clues, you know, of the fourth beast, you know, and why when the Roman Empire, which is that fourth beast, when they fell, the kingdom of heaven wasn't established, because there was still more to the vision. You see? So now it goes on to say, verse 12, as concerning the rest of the beasts, which is talking about the other nations, they had the dominion taken away because they're going to be in slavery, yet their lives were prolonged for a season in time. Why? Because they're in the kingdom of heaven, they're going to be tributary. They're not going to be destroyed, as Esau is going to be destroyed. And the one thing I will say about, I mean, if the Spirit hit me, I'll do a lesson on it. On this guy, Pastor David Lynn, or whatever the hell his name is, you know, talking about that the Edomites are done away with, and Cambridge, a prestigious Cambridge University says that the Edomites were done away during the time of the Maccabees, Judas Maccabees, and Hyrcanus, John Hyrcanus, you know, so on and so forth. Well, I got one scripture to dead that whole argument, you know, because they're claiming prestige, they're claiming authority, they're claiming that they have a certificate, they're claiming that they have the power, the authority to break down scriptures, you know. But who gave them that authority? Wasn't the Most High, Yahweh, Bashem Yahushai. So who gave it to them? They took that shit upon themselves. This is 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 18. Let no man deceive himself. If any man among you seemeth to be wise in this world, let him become a fool, that he may be wise, because this world is foolish. It goes on to say, for the wisdom of this world is foolishness with the Most High. So the Most High didn't establish, I mean, he established this society, he established Esau, let them do what they had to do, but the Most High is not with these colleges and with these so-called doctorates and degrees and all that crap. You know, they're saying that they're the authority. If they don't say it, then it ain't Bible. You know, but the Most High ain't say that. He said the wisdom of this world is foolishness with the Most High, for it is written, he taketh the wise in their own craftiness. So the Lord's going to destroy these devils, man. Got some damn nerve to, you know, that's why the scriptures speak about that they blaspheme, you know, the Most High, you know, them up in the heavens. They're going to talk about, you know, that they're the authority, that, you know, it ain't Bible unless they say it is. You know, fuck out of here with that bullshit. All right. So now, let's go back to Daniel, chapter 7, and verse 13. Because when the true downfall of the fourth empire happens, this is what's going to take place. I saw in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man came with the clouds of heaven. The Son of Man is Yahushai. The clouds of heaven are the chariots. Yahushai said, and this is another clue. When Yahushai comes back, what is he coming back with? Let's go to Revelation chapter 1, verse 7. Behold, he, which is Yahushai, behold, he cometh with clouds. What are the clouds? The chariots. And every eye shall see him. So we're at that time now. You know? We're at that time now. It says, and they also which pierce him, which that goes into reincarnation, and all kindreds of the earth shall wail because of him, even so be true. So we're coming up to the point now where the fourth beast is about to be destroyed and fall. It's going to be taken out by fire. That's that lake of fire. And then the kingdom of Yahushua will be established, which would be our kingdom also, as we're joint heirs with the Lord. So that's why when the fourth beast fell, when the fourth beast fell, you know, back then, the end didn't come, because there was still more. It was still more to the vision. All right. So now, going on, it says, and came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him. Yeah, because now he's about to rule and reign. And there was given him dominion and glory and a kingdom, that all people, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion, which shall not pass away, and his kingdom that which shall not be destroyed. Yeah. So when Yahushua is established, his kingdom ain't going to be taken down. That's what the Most High Yahweh promised King Solomon, or through David and his seed, which was Solomon, which was Yahushua. So Daniel, the 7th chapter, is almost fulfilled. We're at the last stages, you know, of the fulfillment of Daniel, the 7th chapter. Because once that fourth beast falls, this is why Daniel 7 is so important in prophecy, because once this fourth beast falls, the kingdom will be established. And like I said before, any reputable scholar out there will tell you that the fourth beast represents the Roman Empire, which it does. But there are clues and hints within Daniel 7 that let us know that there was still more to the vision. And it is really explained in Revelation, the 13th chapter, where it speaks about the beast being wounded, and that was the Roman Empire, and then that deadly wound being healed, and then that beast coming back into power and exercising the authority of the first beast before it, which was the Roman way, which is the image of the beast. You see, it has nothing to do with Caesar Borgia. You know, you could throw that in there somewhere, but the whole, because back then in the Roman Empire, they weren't worshiping that. The Greeks were, you know, through Serapis, you had Israelites that were following that, you know, but for the most part, what they were really into, or that image they were really into, was the whole Roman society, you know, through its laws, legislation, military, you know, and just their way of life, and the Romanization back then, which today you can call Americanization. If you look up the term Americanization, it's the same thing as Hellenization or Romanization. It's just a different time period, and there are different applications, but it's the same thing. So it says, I, Daniel, was grieved in my spirit in the midst of my body, and the visions of my head troubled me. I came near unto one of them that stood by, and asked him the truth of all this. So he told me and made me know the interpretation of the things. These great beasts which are four kings that shall arise out of the earth. But the saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, even forever and ever. Yeah. So when this fourth beast falls, Yahushua's kingdom will be established. Our kingdom is going to be established. We're going to take control and power through Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. We're going to enforce the law, statutes, and commandments of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai that are already going to be inside of us in the changed bodies that we're going to get, you know. So this is the last scene in the movie. You know, America going down, pushing their image, pushing the mark of the beast, which is a microchip, and eventually going into World War III. Because right now, you know, the least of the flock, they're provoking, you know, the Iranians into war, and that's one of the major players in World War III. You know, which is Persia. They're going to be one of the major players in World War III. So you see things going on, wars and rumors of wars, and, you know, they're provoking, you know, poking at these nations, because the Most High, he's setting the stage up. You know, they got all the technology out. They shut this thing down. They found the perfect crisis to shut everything down, to push out the 5G technology all over the place while everybody was locked up in their houses. You know, they got the infrastructures all set up. They got everything in line, so everything is moving according to prophecy. Everything is moving in the right direction. There's a song, something similar to that. The Apostle Gabar knows the song. Moving in the direction. I don't know the lyrics to it. So it says, then I would know the truth of the fourth beast, which was diverse from all the others, exceeding dreadful, whose teeth were of iron and his nails of brass, which devoured, break in pieces, and stamped the residue with his feet, and of the 10 horns that were in his head, and of the other which came up, which is America, and before whom 3 fell, which was the British, the Spanish, and the French, even of that horn that had eyes, and a mouth that spake very great things, whose look was more stout than his fellows. Yeah, and America's look is more stout than their fellows because they look down upon other European nations, and that's why them other European nations hate America, and eventually they're gonna shoot their missiles on them. So your own allies are gonna turn against you. Why? Because it says there that the Lord put that in their heart to fulfill His words. Everything is about the fulfillment of prophecy, man. And nobody else outside of Great Millstone. I mean, you know, you have other Israelite groups out there that talk about prophecy. But these Christians, these other people out there, most people don't want to talk about prophecy. They don't want to deal with prophecy. All they want to deal with is that tired ass, lame, plantation Christian dogma that all nations can be saved. Boy, oh boy. So it goes on to say, I beheld, and the same horn made war with the saints and prevailed against them. And you see that happen. They came over here to the place where they call so-called Americas. They took down the northern kingdom. Then they brought the southern kingdom over here, put hell on them. That happened here on the soils of America, from Canada all the way down to South America and everything in between. This is prophecy. It says, until the Ancient of Days came and judgment was given to the saints of the Most High. And the time came that the saints possessed the kingdom. Yeah. And that's what we're waiting for. And we know that we're at this time. That's why Yahweh Shai said, when you see these things, look up, for your redemption draweth nigh. It says, thus he said, the fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth. Another key point. Another clue as to that the ancient Roman Empire did not fulfill this. They had the known world at the time, but they didn't conquer over the whole world. They didn't fall and come back into power. That came through America, which was the revival of the Roman Empire with her allies, the EU and NATO. So it says, and shall devour the whole earth, and shall tread it down and break it in pieces. And you see it happening. They're destroying the earth. They're destroying people. They're destroying people's lives. You know, they're polluting everything, physically and morally, spiritually. You know, and Lord's will, you know, I'll do, because I was watching Elder Apostle Gabar's video. He mentioned the Biblical Destruction Group. Lord's will, I'll do a lesson on that. I've done lessons on it before, but there's a lot of videos. There was videos that were put up about the Biblical Destruction Group, but everywhere you go, they're taken down. So Lord's will, I get into that in another lesson. It says, and the 10 horns out of this kingdom are 10 kings that shall arise, and another shall arise after them. Yeah, the other one is America. And he shall be diverse from the first, and he shall subdue 3 kings. And that happened. That's history. And he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High. Did he not do that? Did not America do that to the Israelites? When they came here and took the land of Gad and gave them smallpox and destroyed them, got the Gatling gun and shot them down, you know, destroyed Issachar and Reuben and all the other tribes. You know, did that help? Nah, that wore the saints of the Most High out. Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, when they brought them over here, they wore them down, man, wore them out. And think to change times and laws, and they've done that. And they shall be given into his hand until a time and times and the dividing of times. Yeah, because it was a certain period of time when this prophecy was going to start and it was going to finish. You know? And when it started with the bulk of the slaves being brought over here, this part of the vision, because when we read Second Ezra, the 13th chapter, it spoke about the 10 tribes. It spoke about the other ones coming and being joined together. So this part of it couldn't be fulfilled until Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, the southern kingdom, were brought over to the side of the world. And when they were brought over here to the side of the world and were gathered back to us, to their brothers, then that's when the prophecy of the time period started. And then around 1969, 1970, that's when the truth that we're speaking now has really exploded on the scene. And that was the Lord setting it up for the end. See? And that's what we're teaching right now. We're teaching the message, of everything that happened, everything that was covered up. And we're bringing it to the light through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shem Shai, which is revealing this devil, and eventually will destroy him with the brightness of his coming, as it says in 2 Thessalonians. It says, but the judgment shall sit, and they shall take away his dominion to consume and to destroy it unto the end. Yeah, because once this place goes down, nobody else is going to get up and rule. The Ishmaelites are not going to rule. The Moabites are not going to rule, because the Moabites think because they're getting a foothold on the world and the economy that they're going to be the next rulers, the next ruling empire, that they're going to be the world reserve currency. No, you're going down too, like a cheap slut on a Saturday night. It says, and the kingdom and dominion and the greatness of the kingdom under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High, whose kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey him. Yeah, because there won't be no other nation ruling. They will all be in subjection under us, under Yahweh Bashem Shai and us, the Israelites, Yasha Allah. It says, hitherto is the end of the matter. As for me, Daniel, my cogitations much troubled me, and my countenance changed in me, but I kept the matter in my heart. Why? Because he was astonished. He was troubled, because he really didn't understand what the vision fully meant, because it wasn't meant for him to understand it at that time. It was meant for now, in these times. So we're slowly but surely spiraling to the end of this kingdom. And Daniel, the 7th chapter, cements the whole picture of what the Lord is going to do, and how when this fourth beast is in power and it falls, then the kingdom will be established. This is Psalms 46 and 6. This is in a nutshell, in one verse, the plans that the Lord set up. It says, the heathen raged, the kingdoms were moved, he uttered his voice, the earth melted. And that's it. So these heathen raged, right? They're established, set up, thinking that they're ruling by their own power. It says the kingdoms were moved because one power fell, another one came up. He uttered his voice, because the Lord's given his words now before this place goes down. The earth melted, because the Lord is going to destroy America with fire. And every time you go to the different precepts in the scriptures, it all goes back to fire. It goes back to the great judgment. It goes back to the lake of fire. It goes back to the fire and brimstone, the smoke of a torment going up. The Lord sweeping it with the besom of destruction. So this is the end, man. And this is what the Lord has planned for these devils. And it says, only with thine eyes shall thou behold and see the iniquity. Or matter of fact, let me read that real quick. Only with thine eyes. Spare me 1 second. All right. It's going to go straight to the point. Verse 7. 1,000 shall fall at thy side, and 10,000 at thy right hand, but it shall not come nigh thee. Only with thine eyes shalt thou behold and see the reward of the wicked. See? That's what it says. Because thou hast made the Lord, Yahweh Bashim Shai, which is my refuge, even the Most High, thy habitation. That's why Yahweh Shai said, because thou hast kept the word of my patience, I also will keep thee from the hour of temptation, which shall come upon all the world to try them. See? It says, there shall no evil befall thee, neither shall any plague come nigh thy dwelling. For he shall give his angels charge over thee to keep thee in all thy ways. And this reminds me of the vision that the brother Shapatya from the Chicago camp had. I was watching it this morning, and it put me like in a real reflective spirit, real reflective state, And when he was telling the vision, like maybe halfway through the vision, the way he said that, that the men rolled up, like the Jakes, they were all, like he said it was like a gang, and they were rolling. I mean, you have to see the video. And after a while, I started thinking, that's the angels, that's got to be the angels, because he said they was shooting everything up, killing people in the streets. He said, but it seemed like the bullets was hitting his house, but nothing, there was no damage, So then when they came in, he thought, they were coming for him, but they said, no, we're with you, And pretty much, it was a vision through the confirmation, of the doctrine, which he said he believed anyway, which is true, But then come to find out that the head, the one that was the head, was Yahweh Shai, And I mean, I didn't pick up on that. I just picked up on the angels, But then when he got to the end of the, towards the end of the vision, it's like, oh, okay, that's heavy, And hey, brothers, we close, man. We're very close. Yahweh, trust and believe when I tell you that Yahweh Shai, he's waiting to get his kingdom. He's waiting to start ruling on the planet. So we we're right there, man. We're close. We're right at the door, man. We're right at the door. Like I said, Yahweh Shai already turned the knob. The door is open. He's about to walk out of that door, so to speak. And come down here and defend us, man. Because we need to be defended. The way that this devil is coming down with great wrath, we need to be defended from the power from up on high, of Yahweh Bashim Shai, and they will defend us. That's why I say he'll give his angels charge over thee. It says, they shall bear thee up in their hands, lest thou dash thy foot against a stone. Yeah, because of the angels were set up as ministers to the heirs of the kingdom of heaven. And those chariots are going to be a way for us to escape. Let's go real quick to the book of Isaiah, because there's no other escape, man, but go up into them chariots. Excuse me. This is Isaiah 26:20. Come, my people, enter thou into thy chambers. What are the chambers? Excuse me. The chariots. It tells you that in Revelation 18, Revelation 11, come up hither. So it says, come, my people, enter thou into thy chambers, and shut thy doors about thee. Remember, as in the days of Noah. Hide thyself, as it were, for a little moment. Hide ourselves from what? From the destruction that's coming. Until the indignation be overpassed. What indignation? The indignation of the Most High, which is that fire that's going to come down and rock this world, man. So going back to Psalms 91 and 12, they shall bear thee up in their hands, lest thou dash thy foot against a stone. Thou shalt tread upon the lion and the adder, the young lion and the dragon shalt thou trample under feet, because there's nothing gonna harm us. Once the Lord puts that shield around us, nothing is gonna harm us. It says, because he hath set his love upon me, therefore will I deliver him. I will set him on high because he has known my name. See? Because that name is very important. The name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous runneth into it and is safe. So that name is very important. Those names are very important. That is one of the keys of salvation. That's why the Lord said through the mouth of, I believe that was Peter, he said, there's no name under heaven given whereby men shall be delivered. And that name was who? Yahweh Shai. He said, he shall call upon me and I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will deliver him and honor him. With long life will I satisfy him and show him my salvation. That's going to be beautiful, man. You know, we hope we all make it there, man. You know, we hope we all make it to the finish line. But we right there, man. You know, we're right there, right at the door. And you know, that vision that the brother had is even more confirmation. It's right there, right at the door, man. You know, that's why these demons are messing with us, you know, making everything in our life sometimes negative, you know. You know, just doing things that try to aggravate us, you know, try to convince us that we're not men of the Lord, you know, or whatever the case may be. Hey, but at the end of the day, it's in the hands of the Lord, you know. And whoever the men of the Lord are, the Lord is going to save them. So that's just the bottom line. You know, so, you know, we're just waiting for the Lord to come and deliver us. So once these couple more, you know, because today is December 1st, 2020, year of prophecy. So, you know, they're so-called about to roll out those mandatory vaccines. E is going to roll out those mandatory vaccines, you know, and we're right in, because they said within the first week of December into December 11th, you know, so we're just waiting to see what goes down with that. So with that, you know, I pray that you brothers have been edified. To the next time I say, Shalom.